Hello everyone and welcome to the NAVI webinar. Today we are discussing how growing ties between the African Union, China, and Russia are shaping security and governance in Africa, especially in the Sahel region. With recent coups, rising instability, and foreign influence growing, NATO faces challenges. We will look at how Chinese-built ports, telecom systems, and are raising concerns, how partnerships with authoritarian regimes affect NATO's goals, and how Africa may be a testing ground for joint China-Russia strategies against NATO. Joining us are two experts from NAVI to walk us through what's going on. Let's get started. Dr. John Sunday Ojo is a Postdoctoral Research Fellow at Leiden University in the Netherlands, focusing on intelligence in the Global South. He is also a visiting fellow at Erasmus University, Rotterdam, and a research fellow with the NAVI Veteran NATO Initiative. Dr. Ojo has worked as a consultant at King's College London and is involved with Institute for Research and Policy Integration in Africa. He holds a PhD from the Universities of Portsmouth and 2 master's degrees in global development and urban management. His research focuses on non-state armed groups, especially in Africa, looking at how they recruit, radicalize, and operate. He also studies topics like counterterrorism and the impact of foreign military bases on African security. Ms. Ana Aguilera is a research fellow with the NATO Veterans Initiative, NAVI, and the author of more than 20 publications on global security and defense. She currently heads the West Africa Division at the International Observatory of Terrorism Studies, where she leads multiple projects and research teams focused on defense, peace, and security, particularly in the Sahel and North Africa. She is also the project lead for a 4-year research initiative sponsored by the Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, examining the links between violent extremism and illicit economies in Africa and the Middle East. Anna works closely with the international organization and universities, and her work has been featured in both academic journals and specialized outlets. Hello to you both.
Hi, Angelia. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Dr. John Ojo, after the Burkina Faso government said it stopped a major coup plot involving ex-soldiers and alleged support from the Ivory Coast, how can the region move forward when trust is breaking down with the military and between neighboring countries?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think this signals a bad omen for regional security. The military juntas have lost trust, especially in several neighboring countries, including Nigeria. We have observed cases where Nigeria was even alleged to have collaborated with foreign powers to sponsor terrorism and further destabilize the Sahel region. I think such an allegation has implication for intelligence sharing because security cooperation becomes challenging when trust is broken. Such an occurrence will have a direct consequences, especially in the fight against terrorism. The region can only move forward by working with only trusted allies, which will also have implication for the entire Sahelian security landscape.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Anna, how do African Union collaborations with China and Russia shape its approach to continental security and governance?
So that's a great question. Actually, this collaboration is, I believe, significantly shaping the security and governance dynamics, with, of course, complex implications, let's say, for NATO. Chinese engagement with the African Union is based mostly on this economic investment, on infrastructure development, on security cooperation. China is one of Africa's largest trading partner, and a key supporter of the EU's peace and security architecture. Regarding Russia, for example, its involvement is more, let's say, recent and opportunistic, focusing on military cooperation, on the arms industry, on the deployment of military support to states experiencing conflict, such as Mali, the Central African Republic, Sudan. So the African Union's collaborations with China and Russia have led to a more, let's say, multipolar approach to security and governance on the whole continent. Both countries promote non-interference and support on for sovereign regimes, which in turn has opened the door for a reduction in Western influence and pressure for democratic reforms, no, that the West defends. For NATO, this will mean increased competition in Africa, let's say. So it makes the alliance efforts to promote on governance, stability, under its own terms and conditions more complicated.
Thank you, Anna. Dr. Ojo, how did the recent wave of coups and military regimes in the Sahel region and Africa in general impact the security landscape?
Can you come again?
Sorry. How did the recent wave of coups and military regimes in the Sahel region and in Africa in general impact the security landscape? The wave of coups?
Yeah, I think the various military coups in Africa have promoted a kind of a non-cooperative security system, which several terrorist groups have leveraged to promote transnational terrorism. The coup have prompted a regional security breakdown, limiting the counterterrorism operation in the Sahel region. We have recently witnessed the emergence of terrorist groups, especially those that were considered as new terrorist organization, migrating from Mali, from Burkina Faso, from Niger to Nigeria to Benin. I think the breakdown in security cooperation encourage such a movement of terrorist organization into neighboring countries. So these schools have already created a kind of vacuum whereby the Sahelian states and the neighboring countries cannot work together due to governance problem and the security breakdown. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ojo. Anna, China has recently built 230 ports in Africa, or have owned 230 ports. How might China's port building and Russia working with non-democratic governments make it harder for NATO to support fair government and human rights in the region?
Thank you. Well, this support for these authoritarian regimes usually ends up undermining NATO's efforts to promote democracy and good governance, of course, as we spoke a little bit earlier. Although it doesn't mean that it's a zero-sum game. Chinese or Russian partnerships often come without these conditions, right, related to political reforms or the protection of human rights. So this allows, in turn, to African leaders to resist Western pressure for this democratization process. And this support enables regimes to consolidate power and to maintain stability on their own terms, making it harder for NATO and for Western countries to influence governance outcomes.
Thank you. Dr. John Ojo, do you think Russia's plan to build a naval base in Sudan might affect NATO's role or security efforts in the region? If so, what kind of response might be helpful to keep the area stable and protect shipping?
The presence of Russia and also China in Africa with the withdrawal of Western states such as France has created a kind of vacuum for resurgence of military state, especially in the Sahel region. If we look at the foreign policy of Russia, China in Africa, I think it revolves within the context of regime protection, a situation whereby both Russia and China prioritize protection of authoritarian regime, especially in order to to achieve their aims and objectives in the region. The withdrawal of a country like France, for instance, was motivated by Russia disinformation policy, especially in Africa. So this has also triggered a kind of anti-colonial populism against the Western region. So this makes it difficult, especially for Western region, for the West entirely, to capture Sahelian region, especially to promote democratic system. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna, with the Sahel countries turning away from Western support and forming their own alliances like the AES, how can we help reduce poverty and improve daily life without stepping on local independence?
Thank you, Angelia. So reducing poverty or improving daily life in the Sahel requires, I believe, essentially the support of locally led initiatives, but at the same time respecting this independence of regional alliances like the Alliance of Sahel States recently created. So international actors, including NATO, I believe they can focus on economic development, on humanitarian aid, on capacity building, rather than, let's say, imposing or exporting these political conditions. So NATO, in this sense, still cares about the region's stability, because insecurity in the Sahel can lead to increased extremism, fundamentalism, migration, and other challenges or threats that they spill over into sub-Saharan Africa, the north of Africa, but also to Europe.
Thank you. Dr. Ojo, like she was speaking about violent extremism, how do domestic political challenges in the Sahel countries affect the fight against violent extremism?
Yeah, the change in political climate emanated from military coups in the Sahel region has promoted a kind of a fragmented security agenda. I think we must consider that the Sahelian security threats are transnational and therefore become a big challenge for each state to address. Recently, we have seen the impact of political change on counterterrorism efforts. This has animated the uncoordinated regional counterterrorism operations, making it challenging to achieve regional collective security. We have recently witnessed several terrorist organizations migrating from one country to another due to this lacuna created by political change in the Sahel region.
Thank you. Anna, with about 40% of Burkina Faso controlled by jihadist groups, and with the threat spreading across borders, like Dr. Jean Ojo was just speaking about, why should the international community, including NATO, pay closer attention to what's happening in the region?
Well, this expansion of jihadist control, of course, threatens regional international security, especially towards NATO EU members, as we spoke about earlier. Stability in Burkina Faso, for example, as you mentioned, this case study, has led to increased terrorism, humanitarian crisis, uncontrolled migration, factors that have direct implications for Europe and for NATO member states. So we can say that addressing these challenges kind of effectively can prevent this wider destabilization and of course protect global security interests and borders and fostering this stability that is more than needed now.
Thank you. Dr. Jean Ojo, in your BBC interview last year, you mentioned how La Coroa was first welcomed by local communities, but later started demanding money and causing problems. What can the Nigerian government do now to rebuild trust and protect these communities from being taken advantage of?
Yeah, I think one of the primary responsibilities of any responsible government is to ensure the security of its citizens. And whenever a state fails to safeguard such an obligation, the social contract between the state and the citizen is violated. Considering Nigeria's case and the emergence of a Lakurawa, the group surveys as a non-violent occupational group, which later metamorphosed into violent groups. Before it was transformed into a violent extremist group, the Lakurawa had been helping the communities to combat armed bandits, another terrorist group operating and motivated by economic adventurism. One crucial question is to consider why these communities approach Lakurawa for help. This revolves around the loss of trust in state security agencies. For the Nigeria state to build trust, the affected communities would like to see a non-politicized, genuine, and decisive approach towards combating terrorism.
Thank you. Anna, given the withdrawal of French forces that we spoke about earlier, how is the security situation in the Sahel evolving in terms of France and pulling back?
Yeah, so the withdrawal of French and other Western forces um, has left a significant security vacuum in the Sahel, as my partner of the panel commented earlier. This has encouraged jihadist groups, primarily Al Qaeda and ISIS affiliated factions, to increase an already existing instability in many countries, such as Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and in response, regional actors have attempted to fill this gap, but their efforts are still developing and often lack the resources and coordination to deliver an effective response. And at the same time, geopolitical dynamics have also shifted. Countries such as Russia, China, we spoke about this earlier, are expanding their influence through military cooperation, resource exploitation agreements, diplomatic engagement. France, the EU, and even the United Nations have seen their traditional partnerships with the Sahel states erode. Military juntas in mostly these three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have kind of distanced themselves from Western alliances in favor of these alternative partnerships. So the big question now is whether these shifts will lead to sustainable security improvements or, on the contrary, to further destabilization.
Thank you. Dr. Ojo, with the violence in Nigeria and the Sahel already leading to more migration and security problems in Europe, how can NATO help stop these armed groups?
Uh, I think NATO needs to work with African agencies, uh, especially when it comes to the issue of climate change, because climate change is one of the major drivers of terrorism in Africa currently. And with the emergence of a authoritarian regime in the Sahel, if neighboring countries like Nigeria and Ghana and some other countries bordering authoritarian states can work together with this authoritarian states like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. I think through that, the NATO can penetrate through these states, especially via diplomatic effort, especially when it comes to security-related issue. I think NATO can penetrate through via direct military intervention, because direct military intervention may create a kind of chaos that may not be contained by the region. So the effort should be placed within the context of a diplomatic mission.
Thank you. Anna, how is violent activity, including terrorism, developing in the Sahel, and what impact might that have on NATO security priorities?
So that's quite important questions right now. Violence in the Sahel has not increased, but also expanded, geographically speaking. Between 2007 and 2021, terrorism-related fatalities soared. But since 2021, this rate of violence has reached unprecedented levels. By 2024, actually, the latest records that we have, the Sahel had become the epicenter of global jihadist activity, surpassing other historically significant regions like the Middle East or South Asia. And groups now control vast territories in Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Nigeria, and their influence is spreading toward coastal states like Benin, like Togo, like Ghana. The Gulf of Guinea is actually under an increasing threat, as in this Eastern Sahel side. And this sheer scale and adaptability of violent actions make these counterterrorism efforts increasingly difficult, particularly given the political fragmentation of the region, as we commented. Uh, NATO's shift of interest to the south is in fact relatively new. Currently, the alliance engagement in the Sahel and rather southern neighborhood is primarily indirect, focusing on partnership, on capacity building, on political dialogue. Now, major NATO and is mostly with partners from the north of Africa, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and so on. But in the development of capacity issues, NATO should engage with more countries to say somehow. It actually engages with Mauritania, with Tunisia, in this capacity building, military capabilities especially. But again, this support is not as big as the efforts deployed in other world regions such as Eastern and Southeastern Europe.
Thank you, Anna. Dr. Ojo, now that Nigeria and Niger have lost their security partnership, how can NATO and other outside groups help create stronger borders and improve intelligence sharing to stop extremist groups from spreading?
Yeah, thank you. I think recently the Republic of Niger alleged that Nigerian states they are sponsoring terrorism, and the country is trying to destabilize Niger. When such an allegation was placed on Nigeria, although it generated a lot of rancorous debate among the political elite and scholars around the world, I think there is no alternative than to just work with this authoritarian regime because without any cooperative security model, it will be difficult to defeat terrorism in that region, because we have to look at the nature of terrorism in the Sahel. We have a kind of a transnational terrorism that it is very difficult for a single country to defeat. So it requires a kind of cooperative approach, working together, sharing intelligence within themselves. And for NATO to come in, I don't see NATO coming in directly, especially in terms of involving in military engagements to defeat terrorism. Before, or if that will be done, there is a need to dialogue with these authoritarian states, whether in form of it could be in form of a diplomatic engagement, in terms of maybe persuasion, to prevent the escalation of terrorism into NATO member states. I think this should revolve within that context: diplomatic persuasion, and they should present how contagious such a terrorist escalation could be, and the impact in the neighboring countries. I think with that.
Thank you, Dr. John Ojo. Anna, given the current political trends in the Sahel, do you see a path to democracy, and democratic governance in the region?
Well, the road to this democratic governance, to say somehow, in the Sahel, I think this faces significant hurdles. The wave of military takeovers, the rise of populist anti-Western narratives, suggests that civilian-led governance is becoming more difficult to restore, right? Many citizens disenchanted with previous democratic regimes are viewing these military-led initiatives, regimes, as a viable alternative, at least for now. So, but at the same time, the sustainability of these regimes depends precisely on this ability to deliver security, to deliver economic growth, to deliver basic services. So if they fail to do so, demand for the democratic governance may resurface. The key factors to watch in this case will be the economic performance, the handling of security threats, the response of civil society, external actors such as the West, the NATO, regional economic blocs such as ECOWAS, in my opinion, should focus now on supporting this good governance rather than imposing a kind of outsider style of democracy in a top-down manner. So times are changing, and priorities need to change too.
Thank you, Anna. All right, it's time to ask questions to our audience. Does anyone have any questions you'd like to have answered? Right. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this discussion helped shed light on the latest developments in the Sahel region. A big thank you to our incredible speakers, Dr. John Ojo and Ana Aguilera, for sharing their knowledge and insights. We appreciate your time and look forward to continuing these important conversations in future NAVI events. Take care and see you next time.
See you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ana. Thank you, Dr. John Ojo.
Thank you.